And now I have the great honor to present our guest Devar Torah speaker, Belle Jarniewski. Now, most of you know Belle, but Belle has done some extraordinary things, and I think we need to celebrate having someone like Belle in our community. First of all, she is the executive director of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada. In 2013, Belle was appointed by the federal government to the Canadian delegation of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. She serves as a member of the Education Working Group and the Committee on Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Denial. Today, the 27th of January, is the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It's United Nations International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a very heavy day. And although we celebrate Shabbat Shira and a day of joy, in much of our Jewish history, we have a combination of celebrating our joy while remembering some of the sadder and more tragic moments in our history. So with no further ado, Belle, I invite you to come up. After the service, you join us for lunch.
And Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yes, today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's now been nearly 2 decades since the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution to designate January 27th of each year to honor the memory of the Holocaust victims. And by the way, the resolution was introduced by the Israeli delegate to the United Nations at the time, Silvan Shalom. Yes, they chose the anniversary of the day in 1945 that the Red Army liberated the remaining ill and dying prisoners from Auschwitz. In addition to designating one day each year to hold memorial ceremonies, the resolution rejects any denial of the Holocaust and also calls for the establishment of a UN program of outreach and mobilization of society for Holocaust remembrance and education. Of course, while many countries around the world mark this day, as we know, there are many UN member countries who continue to actively engage in Holocaust denial and distortion, which of course goes completely against the resolution. Tragically, we are witnessing an unparalleled explosion of anti-Semitism around the globe. On October 7th, a massive pogrom took place in Israel, and more Jews were killed on that day than on any day since the Holocaust. We continue to learn more details about that tragic day and the suffering and torture of the hostages, and of course we mourn the loss of our fallen IDF soldiers. Our precious Holocaust survivors did not expect this in their lifetime, and they're telling us that the October 7th events and the world's response since then reminds them all too well of what they experienced in their childhood. I am also devastated by the hate, the violence, the targeting of Jews, and the shocking denial and distortion of what happened, despite the terrorists' own recording of their crimes. So you're probably saying to yourself, okay, but where is she going to go with this in connection to Parshat Beshalach? Well, the Parsha opens with the following verse. Now when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although it was near. For God said, the people may have a change of heart when they see war and return to Egypt. The Israelites coming out of Egypt did not know war. They were a subjugated people. They were slaves, and they feared the idea of war. Much later in history, after the disastrous wars against the Romans, for nearly 2,000 years the Jewish people were without sovereignty. They did not have an army. But eventually it became clear and necessary to the Jews of the Yishuv that a military force was needed, and the Haganah, meaning defense, was organized in 1920 to combat the revolts and attacks of Palestinian Arabs. Sadly, Wars would have to be fought again and again. And yet in every generation, parents hoped and continue to hope that their children would not have to fight. War has always been and remains anathema to the Jewish people. So back to Beshalach. We come to the song at the sea, Shirat Hayam. The song is so beautifully laid out, as you know, in the Torah, and of course it's recited in our daily services. The song is one of praise and thanksgiving, and it's very militaristic, celebrating Hashem's triumphal rescue of the Israelites. God is described as a warrior, and the song appears to celebrate not only the drowning of the Egyptians and their horses, but of the terror of the peoples who lived in the vicinity of the Israelites' route. But traditional commentaries were sensitive to the ethics of the event, and for instance, this in the Talmud. On seeing the drowning Egyptians, the angels were about to break into song when God silenced them, declaring, "How dare you sing for joy when my creatures are dying?" Many have then asked, okay, but if God stopped the angels from singing, why were the Israelites allowed to do so? Well, I have found many interesting responses to this question. Maybe the Israelites needed to give voice to the huge relief of finally being redeemed. The Midrash tells us that God was not angry with the Israelites for singing and rejoicing at the shores of the sea. The people had just escaped great danger, and it was only human that they expressed their relief. But the angels were supposed to have a somewhat broader perspective. They should have kept their awareness of the spark of God that is in every person, even Pharaoh himself. The Talmud also teaches us that our personal elation should not make us forget the misfortunes afflicting others. That's in Brachot. The medieval commentary of Tosafot gives this as a source for the custom of breaking a glass at the end of a wedding ceremony. And that is why we spill out drops of wine on the Seder night, to remind us that our cup of deliverance and celebration cannot be full when others have to suffer. Rashi noted that God retains pity and mercy for the rest of life, even while destroying wrongdoers. Israel and Klal Yisrael live with a difficult dichotomy. On the one hand, we must defend ourselves. On the other, war is ugly. While Israel tries harder than any other country to make its strikes surgical, it's not always possible. And more so when groups like Hamas hide their missiles in schools, mosques, and hospitals and use the local population as human shields. But we do not celebrate the deaths of those caught in the crossfire. Now, since International Holocaust Remembrance Day falls on Shabbat this year, our commemorative program will take place tomorrow in the afternoon at 2 p.m. at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. As we have for a decade now, the Jewish Heritage Center is pleased to partner with the museum. This year, we will be presenting an exceptional program, and I hope that you'll all make an effort to attend. My esteemed IRA colleague and friend, Leon Saltiel, who is also representing World Jewish Congress in Geneva, will present his extraordinary work about the Holocaust in Thessaloniki, Greece. The book that he wrote is called Do Not Forget Me. 3 Jewish mothers write to their sons from the Thessaloniki ghetto. And this was a discovery of the letters of 3 mothers. There are about 55 letters in total to their sons who were in relative safety at the time in Athens. There's also a film that was made about the book. We'll be showing parts of the film. It's very, very moving, and there's also beautiful music in it. And since you're all here today, I'm also going to invite you to take some time after Kiddush or at another time to visit the Holocaust Education Center Museum, which is just down the hall. It's a very unique and special place because every precious artifact in our museum belonged to a survivor who at one time or another lived in Winnipeg. The museum is, of course, open every day and all hours that this building is open. Thank you.